Can you hear me? Now I'm on. Well, the one bit of good news that I have to offer all of you in terms of trying to pull all of this together is that I'm not encumbered with all the knowledge of being an economist. The reality of economics and economists is that sometimes, having spent a day listening to them, one feels not necessarily any wiser than one was at the beginning of the day. In fact, I am considering organizing a global mass suicide of all investment bankers. The level of confidence that one should have today that governments can band together and make the whole series of intelligent decisions that a number of the speakers today have suggested they make, it's quite a daunting leap of faith to think that that can actually happen. So I think suicide is probably a very realistic outcome for anybody whose income is dependent on a rational and positive outcome of future market developments. At least this was what I was thinking. Now, I sat back on this and I said, you know what, the crazy thing is that I've been suicidal for 4 years. Why should I be more suicidal today? And actually, when we think back on it, this crisis began somewhere in mid-2007, and I guess one might say that the rational human being would have committed suicide early in 2007 while the going was good. Having said that, since 2007, we've survived a number of things. Bear Stearns, before that, the beginning of the mortgage crisis in the U.S., subprime, Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, AIG, Citibank, half the banks in the UK, half the banks in the U.S., the de-investment bankingization of all the investment banks in the U.S., the stock market crash, Madoff, the end of the fund of hedge funds business, almost the end of the hedge funds business. March 9th, 2009, when absolutely everybody knew that the stock market had another 30 or 40% to go down. The complete revamping of the banking system in terms of regulatory contemplation of what was appropriate and what was inappropriate. The collapse during the summer of 2009, or the beginning of the collapse of the Eastern European economies. Then the peripheral EU economies breaking up sort of towards the end of 2010. You'll recall, as has been stated earlier today, the US was on the verge of bankruptcy. All of Europe has sort of been on the brink repeatedly for, 6 times, 7 times in the past year and 2 or 3 months. And yet, amazingly enough, we're still here. The Dow Jones is now 60 or 70% up from its bottom. Stock markets are up. Spanish bond markets have rallied. Berlusconi, impossible event of impossible events. He is no longer in power, although I understand some of the women are still around. So we've really somehow bumbled through. And one of the things that I have not heard anybody address today is the capacity for people on a global basis to bumble through. You recall 2000, 2001, the 2000 sort of disaster that was going to blow everybody away? I do think we as a human race have the ability to focus on what is going wrong when they are going wrong, when things are going wrong, and to be completely oblivious of what might go wrong when things are going well. After 4 years of things going not particularly well, I think our capacity to envision the worst has been developed to a sublime level. I mean, we really have defined disaster in at least 1,000 different forms. And of course, we have defined success in such a way that no conceivable permutation of political outcomes could lead to all of those things necessary for success. My guess is, and this is an absolute non-economist point of view, that the world will for the next several hundred years be faced with an interminable sequence of disasters which will appear in retrospect and in advance almost as serious as the ones that we've been living with over the last few years. And you'll recall, before the last few years, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2006, 1998, 1997, LTCM, Thailand, over and over and over again. And all those good years, we were faced with an unending series of disaster scenarios and disastrous occurrences. I do not suggest by any way, shape, or form that we should underestimate the capacity for our governments, our bankers, ourselves, to take a bad situation and make it worse. Of course we can do that, and we've proved it over and over again, particularly over the last 4 years. Having said that, where things are today, at least from certain markets' perspectives, is better than it was a month or two ago, better than it was 2 or 3 years ago, and given all the misfortunes that resulted from policies in the early 2000s, we're probably better off than we were in 2006, 2007, when those things that contributed to the disaster were being undertaken. I'd like to make 3 points. Number one, it does seem that there is a financial market and that somehow or another there is a lot more resilience in human nature than one gives it credit for. Number two, the natural tendency of all humans is to connect 2 dots, here and here, or here and here, and draw a straight line through them. The old concept of fear and greed dominating people's thinking is perhaps an oversimplification, but to a certain extent, all of us in our heart of hearts at various points in time have emotions driving our thinking processes, and those emotions are often fear and greed. The ultimate reality, historically speaking, over the last 70 years, let's say since 1945, has been that we have been able to come out with a reasonable result. I think listening to the economists speak this morning and this afternoon, other than alternating baths of cold and hot water, one can conclude that there are possibilities to sort this mess out. There are possibilities to make it worse, but in general, since most people's natural aversion is to self-destruction, people will eventually, when contemplating and faced with the immediacy of self-destruction, hopefully avoid those steps which will cause self-destruction tomorrow. The question is, can you string together enough of those decisions to eventually avoid medium and long-term self-destruction? That's less clear. I don't think we can make any realistic projections about the medium and long term because we may all be blown to smithereens by the Iranian atomic bomb or the Pakistani atomic bombs or anything else. I think what we have to do is operate on some basic assumptions on how markets and people work, and I think the way markets and people work is that people tend to overreact in a positive and a negative sense, and when they overreact, there tends to be a compensation. End of story. It's not a whole lot more complicated than that. We just can't say when it is that that happens. We've had some disastrous developments. The marketplace has survived those disastrous developments. You, the clients of EFG FP, have helped EFG FP survive 4 rather remarkable years. I don't know if any of you are aware of this, but EFG FP was sort of born in the minds of the founders of the organization in 2007, in the sunny days of the spring of 2007, and launched its first product on the 31st or the 30th of December of 2007. Since then, the litany of catastrophes that I just enumerated before have occurred, and despite that, this organization has, with the support of the people in this room, clients and counterparties, gone from a startup to a highly profitable, very strong growth organization which year in, year out, 2007, 2008, 9, 10, and 11, has shown strong growth, got to break even at 2008. This year has hit 280 employees, 10 offices, 9 countries around the world, and has very strong double-digit growth on the revenue side, good profitability, and outstanding prospects. This short plug for EFGFP is actually a backward way of saying thank you to all of you. The immediate, let us say, 1 to 2 year outcome of the success of the EFGFP organization should be an IPO which was announced as being under contemplation in October by the EFGI organization, the parent organization of EFGFP. It is the intention of EFGFP to carry out an IPO as soon as the markets are reasonably sustaining such an aspiration. We will, before, during, and after this process, continue to strive to perform the quality of service that you have come to expect from EFGFP, and we would ask all of the people in this room to continue to provide us the confidence that you have so generously shown us over the course of the past years to enable us to continue to deliver the kinds of performance you've come to expect of us. So thank you again, and have a very good afternoon.